Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J More Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your questions into the comment box, and you'll see me turn my head from time to time, and I'll check and see if there's any questions or comments that need to be shared. We have a quick word from my sponsor, and then we'll be right on to the show. Step into the heart of Howard County's culinary scene, from the vibrant Meriwether district to the hidden gems scattered around the county. Indulge in diverse cuisines that paint a flavorful picture. Don't miss Maryland Koreatown, adding its unique spice to the culinary tapestry. Support local businesses, celebrate community, and savor the rich flavors that define Howard County's dining experience. You're welcome in Maryland, where your taste buds are in for a treat. Visit howardcounty.com for more information. Today's guest is Faith Kramer, a food writer and recipe developer concentrating on the foodways, history, and customs of the Jewish diaspora. She is the author of 52 Shabbats, Friday night dinners inspired by a global Jewish kitchen. Faith develops recipes and writes about Jewish customs and food, as well as travel and global ingredients. As a columnist for J, the Jewish News in Northern California, she writes articles on food and cooking along with original recipes. Let's welcome Faith.
Hi, Dara. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you here. And how I always start the show, my question is, what's on your plate today after doing the show?
I'm actually developing a recipe for Purim. As you know, for Purim, filled and stuffed foods are kind of traditional because of the nature of the Purim story. With some say Hashem God is hidden in the story. Others say because there were so many hidden layers to the nature of Esther and Mordecai's relationship. So stuff filled in stuffed foods are pretty traditional. And because Esther is said to have been a vegetarian to keep the rules of kashrut during her time in the palace, it's also vegetarian. And because I'm me, I just came back from 3 months in traveling, 2 of which were in India. And every time I had a potato samosa, I thought, wouldn't that make a great filling for a knish? So this afternoon, I'm developing a recipe with a potato samosa filling, with chilies and potatoes and garam masala and all kinds of onions and garlic and all kinds of good things, but inside a knish. And so that's my plan. We'll see what happens. You never know when you develop a recipe.
No. So you're developing it for Jay, or is it for a future cookbook? Fill us in.
Right now, I'm focused on my work for the J, and I'm trying to launch a Substack newsletter called Newish. But the newsletter isn't off the ground yet. And I also write for other publications and websites. But this would be for the J, but I do own the rights to all my recipes that appear in the J. So they sometimes have afterlives. But the J, you can go to jweekly.com. You can search my name, Faith Kramer, and you'll find a whole list of all my articles and all my recipes. And the J does not have the paywall, so it's all there for you. And I've been writing for them for 14 years, 2 columns a month on the average. So there's a lot of recipes there for people to search out free, or they can get my cookbook.
Right now at the top of this, if you go, 52 Shabbats,
which is available at. I'm like a little confused by the video. I apologize. Which is available.
It's showing correctly.
Okay,
it's not backwards.
It's available at bookstores, and both brick and mortar bookstores and online bookstores. You can go to my website, faithkramer.com, and you'll see links where to buy it. It's very available, and it has about 100 of my recipes, 52 in a menu for Shabbat. And then supporting recipes, vegetable dishes to make, desserts to make, and what I call fundamentals, such as, chicken soup or vegetable soup with matzo balls. And I tell you how to make them either floaters or sinkers. I know that each camp is pretty committed to whether they like a dense matzo ball, an ethereal matzo ball. And I try to help people make the matzo ball of their dreams.
You know
And
what?
yeah.
When you talk matzo balls, I'm a floater. My mother had a floater. That's what I wanted, and I struggled to get a floater. And I was talking at a Hadassah group of some sort, and I said, I've tried the seltzer, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried everything. And the woman says, put an extra egg in it, and that was the whole answer.
Well, a floater needs more liquid, whether it's the egg or the seltzer or the chicken stock or whatever you're using as your liquid, and it needs to have more room in the pot. And the most important thing is you need not to be obsessive about shaping the ball.
Right.
If you have these perfectly formed mini golf balls and you've rolled them and you've just really compressed it, you are definitely going to have a sinker. So, the combination of more liquid in your mix,
The lighter an area
the
there.
lighter an area they will be. Also, the more room they have to spread in your pan of water when you boil them, or your pan of stock when you boil them, and how much you handle the dough as you make the balls. Those are the three things. And I did extensive testing because a friend of mine just felt like it was her fate to have floaters or sinkers. She couldn't control it. And I said, that doesn't make sense. I always get my floaters. So I actually purposely set out to make sinkers and to try to control these variables. And it was pretty evident pretty quickly that you could control it. You are in control of your matzo balls. And I know a lot of people feel very secure to the matzo ball mix. I personally don't use one. If you like, you can add some baking powder to your matzo ball. If it's Passover, look for a Pesach baking powder. And that will help leaven it and make it rise as well.
Let's do a little background. We're going to come back to the book because it's truly fascinating, and a lot of the history that you give to Jewish people within the book and the many tribes that we have, I found fascinating. But you studied journalism at NYU. How did
Yes, I did.
how did you end up in California? And you did public relations and marketing, raised a family. So you're now in California, you're writing a book, you raised a family. Why food? When did that pop up and you said, this is my new path now that the kids are grown?
That's an interesting question, Dara. And, it's not one that I really get asked a lot, so I need a second to put together my answer. I would say that I grew up with a mother who was a fearless cook. And her mother was a horrible cook. I mean, Grandma Anna, her brisket only had flavor if she burnt the onions. Her oven, I turned it on once and I set the paper bag she stored on it on fire. I mean, she just was not a good cook. A few things that have influenced me and were very good. My cabbage wrap meatloaf, like a stuffed cabbage meatloaf, is based on her stuffed cabbage. I have her blintz pans, and you make blintzes like she did, and so a few other things she did that I've emulated. But in general, it was my mother's attitude, and my mother made cooking seem fun because she was always trying new things, and she had a kitchen garden and herbs and stuff like that. So there was always something exciting happening. I personally have a black thumb. I don't garden at all, but I appreciate I live in California, so there's lovely produce all year round and I have access to it. So I feel that I learned what good produce is from her, but I don't personally grow it. So, I had that growing up, and she didn't really teach me about cooking as much as let me experiment in the kitchen and be supportive. And then when I discovered cookbooks, I guess, when I was in college at NYU, and I read, and I just was fascinated that through a cookbook, I could be somebody else. I could be somewhere else. I could eat different food. I could conceive of myself in different ways. So, and then I started reading international cookbooks, and I love to travel, and I think that shows in my recipes and how I develop recipes. But I could travel in my kitchen. I could eat. I could, be cooking locally, but eating globally. And that actually became a theme for my blog. When I had a blog back a few years ago, I had a blog for about 15 years. And those all kind of drew me in. But what drew me into the Judaism and Jewish cooking was I found out I didn't have much of a Jewish education. I grew up a secular Jew. My grandparents were, one set of grandparents were kosher and nominally Orthodox, but nothing that kind of passed down to us. And and it was through Jewish food I discovered my Judaism. I discovered my connection with other Jews. I like to say everything I learned about Judaism I learned through food, and that's not quite right. But exploring the food ways of Jews around the world has certainly made me better educated and more connected to my own Judaism. So I think if you put all those things together and then you add that I like to feed people, feeding people is my love language. And if I can't feed them, I want to give them a recipe or an idea of how they could feed themselves with. So becoming a food writer with my background in journalism and public relations and marketing all kind of came together for me.
Right. I want to tell you, if you can turn around, if you look at this, yeah, that's it. Face us a little bit more. I was losing
Let me
half of
move
your
my chair.
punim.
Yeah.
I was
And
losing
also I
half
have
of
to
your
apologize.
punim there.
I'm on the tail end of a cold, so I'm occasionally sipping here some hot tea.
That's okay. We covered a lot of things. You talked about your blog, which is clickblogappetit.com.
If you go to my website, faithkramer.com, I think it's a little easier to remember that.
Right.
And
But
there's a link there to the old blog. I mean, I kept it active and you could see all the old recipes. And there's a link there to all my recipes that the newspaper
right,
from Northern
right,
California.
right. Well, about the blog, in one of the interviews that you did, I went to look, and you had talked about when you started your blog, there was only a few people doing it, and that it became a social group. And I went back and I looked, and it was pretty much exactly when I started mine. It was 2005. It was the same here in Baltimore.
Uh-huh.
And yours was October 2005. And mine, I think, was like September. So, it was all around the same time.
Yeah, in my
And
first post, I think I wrote testing.
right. And, I said I should be doing my PR and marketing work, whatever. And I looked at it, and so many things are outdated on it. I made a note to try to go back in if I still remember how to do it. And at least I keep paying my $10 a year to Google for the diningdish.blog. But I think, we're sort of similar in generation and what we did and how we started to get our foot in the door with food. Um, you talked about India, which is, to me, is fascinating. 3 months in India. Is there family there?
No, it was about a 3-month trip. We did some time in Singapore and Southeast Asia, and then we ended up in Mumbai, and we went on. This was the third trip for my husband to India, and my second trip. The first trip we've actually done together, though, so that made it very special. And we did, we were with some friends in the beginning, so we did the Taj Mahal and the Golden Triangle, and we did Varanasi, and we did a bunch of stuff like that. And then we explored Rajasthan, and then we came south, and we went to Goa, and then we were in Kerala. And I've been fascinated about the not just the Cochin Jews, but the Malabar Jews. And I can give you some background on those. But I got to spend a lot of time tracing down the old village synagogues and meeting people that were restoring them or keeping them alive, and it was just, it's just, and collecting recipes, as I went along. So that's kind of my MO wherever I go, even if it's not a Jewish themed trip. I try to seek out Maybe I'll go to a Friday night dinner somewhere at a Chabad house, or I'll connect up with a synagogue for services or a Hanukkah party, or to get invited to somebody's house for a Friday night
Right.
dinner, or I'll look for a museum, or I'll look for old synagogues. I'll just look for those connections.
Right. I found that, in looking through the book, and there something else had come in. Somebody, a woman, a Beni Jewish woman, had written a poetry
Oh,
book,
yes, it's a fabulous book.
and I can't really talk about poetry is not food, so I passed it on to the editor. But there's another woman that I'm friendly with on Facebook whose name at the moment escapes me.
Esther David?
No, no,
No.
no. I'll find it and send it to you
Okay.
later on. But in speaking to some of the people that I know that are more religious, go to synagogue, I said, were you aware that there are Jewish people in India? They went, no. Totally clueless. And there's the Beni, the Koshin, and the Baghdadi, and there's
There's
two
four.
sects of the Beni, I think.
There's like, depending on how you count the Malabar Jews, how they break up, there's 4 or 5 different groups in Israel. Plus, India rather. Plus, there's the expats from other places, and they have some very strong Chabads there as well. But I find that in my talks, I often talk about the Jewish spice trade and how Jews controlled the spice route for several hundred years, and how that these Jewish communities got dispersed in China and India and other places. They were kind of like commercial franchises for the spice traders to. They would connect with. It was a place they could stay. They could get kosher food. They could get their letters of credit honored. They could trust their landsmen, if you will, to warehouse their goods or supply a ship or feed their camels, whatever the particular need was. And so that's why you had some of these settlements in, say, originally in the Malabar Coast, where Jews were very, very important in the pepper trade, and deep into China, like Kaifang, which was an end of one of the spice routes, as well as all along those routes. And I find when I give these talks, people are most fascinated about Jews in China and Jews in India, because it just seems so far from their conception of what is a Jew and what is Jewish food. We could talk about what is Jewish food. That's very contentious. And I've always been very sad about that, because a lot of people have an idea that a Jew, whatever Jew is, just looks just like them. And for a majority of people in North America, that means it's a Ashkenazi Eastern European connection. And I remember I had a blonde Jewish friend at NYU, and my grandmother refused to believe that she was Jewish, and she was actually an observant Orthodox Jew, because she was blonde. And just that typifies to me this kind of narrow approach to what is a Jew. And one of the things I've learned through the Jewish diaspora, and I try to convey in the book, is that the breadth of what makes a Jew and who is a Jew is global, as is our food. So if I've done any little thing about helping people understand that there were, or still is, vibrant Jewish history and life in places that are different than as Jewish, I'm very happy.
Right. Well, I've found all that fascinating in your book, and definitely you've taken what we know as the regular flavors, or what's considered for a Shabbat dinner. Usually it was chicken or it was brisket, and taken these global flavors, spices, whether it be Chinese, whether it be Middle Eastern, whether it be Spanish or Mexican, are all in the book, brightening up the flavors for everyone. Spices, fabulous. People know that I had worked for a spice company.
I didn't know that.
I worked for Van Spices. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They did mostly private label, but I did that for about 5 years. I had Ori Zohar on, who was burlap and barrel. And these are wonderful spices. They're single origin. And you should only, I mean, I opened up the package, the plastic bag, the box still, and I opened it up, and the cumin, the single source cumin. Last I checked, he was in Zanzibar with his partner. They go out in the fields and they go to the growers and they give them a decent living wage to produce for them. They said, "What do you need?" But I digress. So,
Well, not really. I just came back from India and I visited a number of tea plantations, spice plantations, nurseries for spice plantations, and saw nutmeg hanging in the tree and all that kind of. Got to taste cardamom before it was dried, and then got to taste it again when it was dried. I mean, it's there's a reason there was a spice trade. These special ingredients that turn kind of everyday food magical, and I try to take elements of that and combine it. And everything goes through my personal filter. So, for example, my brisket is my son's favorite brisket is the pomegranate molasses brisket. Pomegranate molasses is a Middle Eastern, Near Eastern kind of tangy, sharp syrup
right.
made from pomegranate juice and lemon juice. And it cuts through a brisket or a pot roast unbelievably well. My husband's favorite is one with Ethiopian spices, the Berber. And the Berber is kind of like a paprika-y kind of curry, for lack of a better word. It's not really a curry at all, and it's if you've ever had Ethiopian food like a Dora Wat, that's the spicing in it. And I take that and I make a pot roast or a brisket with it, and that's his favorite. And then I also have a recipe for a red wine pot roast, like my mother, who was the queen of pot roast, made. And it's kind of funny. Here's this one recipe. I had two sisters. Unfortunately, I lost my middle sister, and all three of us. She made it for all of us all the time, and she never made it the same way twice. And my family liked mushrooms, so she'd throw mushrooms in it. My sister's family didn't like mushrooms, and she's yelling at me, "There's no mushrooms in it. There's no mushrooms in it." So it's such a personal experience. So I love when I see the people play with the recipes and they customize them and make themselves. And 52 Shabbats lives in this day and age. So about a quarter of the main recipes and almost all of the fundamental type recipes are vegetarian or vegan, and there's a healthy number of fish recipes.
Right.
And
I noticed.
I often give vegetarian or vegan options for dishes as well. So um, I just try to match how people eat now. And to me, the most important ingredient in a Shabbat dinner is intention. And I don't know if you noticed in this, it's arranged by seasons, and in the seasonal introductions, I go through the Jewish calendar because I don't think and I go through the holidays in the calendar and give menus that you could use from that. So it's not just a Shabbat cookbook. And because I try to give as many make ahead as possible, I like to think, and I give as many kind of vegetarian options as I can. I think it's like good for today's cook.
Well, I noticed for the Rosh Hashanah dinner, they suggested that the main course was carrots and lentils. Am I right? Lentils?
There is in the fall chapter, there's a wonderful recipe for
Yeah.
Ceylon, which is like a date honey. You could use pomegranate molasses, or you could use um,
Honey.
honey, and you roast your carrots and you serve them on a bed of flavored lentils. So what I like about that dish is it's substantial. It's a real main course for vegetarians or for people who are opting not to eat meat, but it's also a really nice side dish. So you can make this great substantial side dish that a vegetarian or vegan at your table, if it's vegan, you may not want to do it with honey,
Right.
can have as a celebratory main dish without feeling deprived. And and it makes a great accompaniment for your chicken or your brisket or whatever else you're making.
The we're saying adapting. Your step grandmother was Italian.
Hungarian Jewish.
Hungarian, and right. And when the immigrants come to any country, they take those family recipes, they adapt it to what's there. And this is what is being reflected in the book. It is natural. A lot of times the ingredients they're used to in Italy are not available here. And then they adapt. And I think it's a melting pot with all these different flavors.
Yes, but I think about having a global Jewish kitchen, and I'm pulling techniques and ingredients and symbolism and meaning and flavors from all over, and I'm combining them in ways that interest me. So I don't, so yes, I have a traditional matzo ball soup there, but I also have one that's been inspired by the cuisine of the Jews in Mexico City, with matzo balls that might have jalapeno and cilantro in it, and it have hominy corn pozole in it, and it's just like a Friday night fiesta in the bowl, if you will.
Well,
And
you do the gefilte fish with jalapeno.
I do the gefilte fish. I do a baked gefilte fish with North African flavors, and it does have a smashed pepper and tomato topping. Yes.
Does your husband cook?
When we first got together, I was on a lot of boards and had a lot of volunteer meetings, and he would cook. He would make a roast beef. He would make a turkey breast. He once made me a lasagna. But
Just
it
once.
wasn't, yeah, usually it was a turkey breast or lasagna or a roast beef, and we would eat it till it was done. And, but I was always the one that was much more interested in food and cooking. And now he mostly does dishes. He's done a lot of dishes. I mean, think about how many times I had to test these recipes, how many dishes he did.
But you're very thorough, and to tell people that everything, you don't have to go hunting back here. So if you're on a page for for the fall Rosh Hashanah dinner, it does have a segment in there that tells you the side dishes and the rest and the page number for all these things that would make that Shabbat dinner.
Right. And I also say that I am not one of those people that for Shabbat, where it's like, where, it's, I make a nice dinner. It's like a dinner party dinner to me. It's not like I have to make everything everybody wants or likes, and I think one of the things that's happened to Jewish food is that people only bring it out at Jewish holidays, and it becomes very, very set in its ways, and you don't get to explore the flavors and all. So I'd rather people focus on keeping kind of the meaning and flavor of Jewish food alive rather than always having this set, every Jewish holiday, it's going to be your roast chicken and your brisket and maybe your, whatever your noodle dishes or whatever. I kind of want people to blow that up and just experience the world of Jewish food, and particularly how I interpret Jewish food.
Right. It's interesting. I love when I have my guests on. I'm forced to learn. It's not really forced. I enjoy it. I start delving into their life and what they're doing. What I didn't know the definition of lakis means little oily things.
Yeah, there's a lot of these words that
I knew gefilte fish.
When we talk about the Yemen spice mix, which I adore, called hawash. Hawash means all that is needed. So there's lots of those little things around that if you think about them, they add a lot more to it.
Last week, my guest was Faith. Why am I not thinking of her name? Well, last week's guest who was on, she happened to live in Baltimore for a period of time when she was going to Johns Hopkins and University of Baltimore. You also said that you lived in Baltimore for a couple of years in the 70s.
Yes, I worked I had an internship between my junior and senior years of college at NYU at the Baltimore Evening Sun. May it rest in peace. I worked there. This was the summer of 75. And then I didn't even go to my graduation. They hired me for the copy desk there, which means I edited and wrote headlines. right out of college, and I never even went to my own graduation in 76. And I worked there in 2-3 years, and then I moved on to the Associated Press in New Jersey, and then I moved to California after that. So at first I lived in Cathedral Hill, pretty much around the corner from Tio Pepe. Is that still there? I don't even know.
Tio Pepe's is still there.
And we used to get now I didn't eat in a lot of the classic shellfish places because my boyfriend at the time was kosher. But so he did make some accommodations. He would eat fish or vegetarian now, but shellfish place was pretty tough. So we didn't do that. But with Tio Pepe, they had a fish with bananas, which we thought was so exotic. And we also went to Hausner's. And I don't remember anything about the food at Hausner's except maybe it was creamy. Other than that, I don't remember. I just remember all the different portraits and artwork. And it was I later read that they sold the art for like $11 million, and the ball of string went for $4,000. And I was like, well, I guess so, And then there was this really fancy place called Marconi's, maybe?
Marconi's, yeah.
Marconi's. And that was already kind of like older people and out of style when we went there. We were much happier in Morris's place.
Yeah.
Martix, something like that.
Martix.
That's felt more like having lived in Greenwich Village for NYU, it felt more like a villagey kind of place. And I remember going to Chinatown, and we used to joke it wasn't even a Chinatown block, it was Chinatown Corner. And then, of course, the Jewish delis on mostly Atman's, which I think is a survivor there. There were a few others. I do remember from my style book, newspapers have style book, how you have to refer to things. And I still remember this clear as the bell. I could see it on the page, that area of East Lombard Street that is known as the block should be capitalized, the block. That's all it said. And then I guess our favorite kosher place was out, and it was, we had moved to Reisterstown Road, but we were not in Pikesville. We were still in the city. It was off the Jones Falls Expressway. I don't remember more than that. But there was a place further out. It was called the Sabra Restaurant, and they made the best fried chicken. It had cumin. It was Maryland style, but it had cumin in the crust. And I remember once we had put the leftovers in the trunk of my car, and this crazy person had thought we were doing a drug deal and was tailgating and following and beeping us. We had to go to a police station to get him off our tail. And he thought we put drugs in our trunk. It was just our fried chicken leftovers. And we laughed about it, thinking, well, it's really good stuff. It is kind of addictive. And then, I just have a lot of really good food memories. And one thing that's always stand out is there was a restaurant, Uncle Charlie's, and that was the first of the more modern restaurants I remember in Baltimore. And all their plates had UC on it. And it turns out they bought all the old dishes from the University Club, which is why they were Uncle Charlie's. And of course, I shopped all the public markets. I remember the guy with the fresh horseradish, grinding the fresh horseradish in front of Lexington Market. And are they still like raw food? Or are they all prepared now? And how many? I used to go to Fells Point Market.
Well, Lexington Market has been. There's a new building to it, and it's. There are other markets around town. Fells Point is very big right now. If you were Cathedral, you probably went to Louis' bookstore.
I don't really remember that well. I mean, I lived in Cathedral Hill for a little while, and then I moved out to a apartment complex in Reisterstown, so we would go up more towards Pikesville.
Right. Yeah. Well, going down memory lane, we can carry this on for people who aren't in Baltimore. I'm sure it's not very.
I was really, I left Baltimore for to come to California for a job, but it was a great place for being Jewish. It was a vibrant community. It had community centers, it had synagogues, it had restaurants, it had it had a social life, what Ted Merwin calls the third place, where you could meet as Jews but not be in a synagogue. And it just was a great place to settle down and have roots. I got taken out of it, but I regard it very fondly, which is why I follow Jay Moore on Facebook to kind of keep connected to it.
That's terrific. And that's sort of, didn't you do a couple recipes for Jay Moore?
Maybe when the book came out, I don't remember. I have to check the site, because I sent out a bunch of recipes that people could have just put up without me doing it. But I'm quite happy to provide any recipes for Jay Moore that they would like, particularly around holidays and stuff. And if you go to my blog, clickblogappetit.com, which you get to through faithkramer.com, there is a little write-up, I think, with my memories of the cumin fried chicken and a recipe for it.
Right. Terrific. Let me cover this. We're going to remind everybody everything you want to know about Faith or connections to the things that she's done, faithkramer.com. And that'll lead you there. And then also in the comment section, there's a lot of links for Faith, and you can reach out to her.
Oh, please do. I love to hear from people. I love answering questions. My email is faith@faithkramer.com.
Yeah,
or you could go to faithkramer.com and contact me through that.
Right. What's next for Faith? Is there a cookbook in the offering?
Well, I have two granddaughters. One is 6 months, one is 3 years old, and they just moved here from London. So I think I'm going to be grandma for a little bit. And I'm still writing my column for the J. I hope to launch my Substack newsletter called Newish, Newish, and you can sign up for it now. But I'm still haven't produced my debut issue yet. And I'll have some unique recipes there. I'll be talking about ingredients. And 52 Shabbats was a passion project for me. I just lived it and felt it for a dozen years before I sat down and write it. My husband likes to say I couldn't have written it before I wrote it, because everything kind of channeled through me. So I'm looking for my next passion project. Maybe it'll be more 52 Shabbats. Maybe it will be something else. So I'm kind of looking to use the newsletter as a way to explore that. I'm just kind of traveling and tasting the world, and it's really, really great.
It's wonderful. I'm going to ask you a couple of the questions that I ask at the end of the show.
Sure.
We're running a little long, so I don't want to take up more of your time.
Dara, I could talk for hours with you. It's very easy to talk to you. Thank you for having
me. If you wake up tomorrow with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
Being able to produce video clips. I come from a writing background. So the fact that I've even somewhat mastered photography kind of surprises me. And then I have the whole video thing. Luckily, I have a daughter-in-law that's pretty good at it, and she helps me. But if I could have a new talent, that would be it.
I understand that completely. I'm teaching myself reels, and I get excited when I finally get something down and put it out on a reel. If you could go back and tell your 18-year-old self something, what piece of advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Have confidence in yourself and don't fall for the imposter syndrome.
Okay. What's the best bite you had all week?
I made a pot of a Malaysian kind of curry, I guess, for lack of a better word, stew called a rendang, which has got ginger and galangal and cinnamon and star anise in it and coconut. And it's kind of a different, you kind of braise the meat and then it browns as you cook down the liquid. And it's kind of magical tasting. So I'm playing with turning that into a brisket flavor.
Terrific, terrific. All right. What didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
Well, I probably should have said that 52 Shabbats has won some awards. It won Best Cookbook from from the Indies, which is independently published books, which is quite wonderful. It won that was a gold. It won a silver from Publishers West for design, and it's incredibly easy to use. You did a really thorough job.
Thank you.
I guess the only thing you didn't ask me that some people ask me is what's my favorite recipe in the book. So assuming you asked me that, I would always say it depends on, where I'm at and what I'm eating. But right now I would say it's my vegetable soup with Yemeni flavoring and it's, and I like to put little matzo balls in it. And it's just really, maybe because it's a little cold here and I have a little cold. It's just what I want to eat right now.
Right. That's terrific. Well, I thank you so much, Faith.
Thank you.
Shabbos.
Thank you so much. Good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom. Almost anyway. Yeah.
And I know our paths will cross again and we will remain in contact because I just know that.
Well, thank you, Dara, and thank you, Jay Moore and jaymoreliving.com. And
All right.
It's lovely to have a way to stay in touch with my Baltimore pastor. It's very meaningful to me.
Terrific. Thank you so much for being on the show. And our producer took her out. Next week's show, my guest will be Rowena Scherer, author of the just-released cookbook geared to family-friendly global recipes called A Taste of the World. Her philosophy is to eat to explore, which is her website, eat2explore.com, where families come together over country, culture, and cuisine. And it's geared for the family to cook together. And she will be on next week. A lot, you're noticing spices, global flavors. This is important for the table, whether for children or for you to spice up your life. And now a word from our sponsor. Step into the heart of Howard County's culinary scene. From the vibrant Meriwether district to the hidden gems scattered around the county, indulge in diverse cuisines that paint a flavorful picture. Don't miss Maryland Koreatown, adding its unique spice to the culinary tapestry. Support local businesses, celebrate community, and savor the rich flavors that define Howard County's dining experience. You're welcome in Maryland, where your taste buds are in for a treat. Visit howardcounty.com for more information. If you need to reach me, you can reach me. My email is food@jaymoreliving.com or my Instagram. Give me a follow at Dara Cooks. All shows are immediately archived in video form on Jaymore's Facebook page and jaymoreliving.com. Feel free to dig into our video archives of past shows. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. May your plate see you next Thursday.